Good evening and welcome to the Standing Resolution, the show where big ideas get a fair fight and nobody leaves without a few things to think about. Tonight's question touches something genuinely ancient. Humanity has always fractured across language, and we have always dreamed, at least occasionally, of closing that gap. Whether that dream is worth chasing and what we might lose in the chasing, that is exactly what we are here to examine. Tonight's resolution, read precisely as submitted, a single universal second language would help humanity more than hurt it. Now, a word about how we do things here. Each debater was assigned their position. That means the person arguing for this resolution may privately have doubts, and the person arguing against it may secretly find it appealing. We do not know, and frankly, it is none of our business. What matters is the quality of the argument, not the biography behind it. I think that is actually how good reasoning ought to work. You stress test an idea regardless of your feelings about it. One side will argue that a shared second language lifts more than it costs, in cooperation, in access, in the simple human ability to under.
Let me start with a simple image. A doctor in one country has figured out how to treat a disease more effectively. A researcher in another country has data that would confirm it. A public health official in a third country has the resources to act on it. None of them share a language. The knowledge exists. The solution exists. People die anyway. That is not a hypothetical. That is the texture of how preventable suffering actually accumulates in the world. Now I want to be precise about what this resolution says because precision matters here. It does not say we should erase anyone's native tongue. It does not say culture should be flattened or that one nation's language should rule over others. It says a universal second language. Something everyone learns in addition to what they already speak and love. The addition, not the replacement. The case for this is not romantic, it is logistical. Right now, the friction cost of language difference falls unevenly and heavily. A scientist whose first language is not English must work twice as hard to publish, to be read, to be taken seriously. A patient who cannot speak the dominant language of a hospital receives worse care measure.
Mordecai makes it sound clean. A commons, a shared harbor, ships that fit everywhere. I want to take that image seriously because it is genuinely appealing. But here is what the image leaves out. Who decides the shape of the harbor? That is the question this resolution cannot escape. There is no neutral language waiting in the wings. Every candidate for universal second language carries the fingerprints of the civilization that built it. Its grammar encodes assumptions. Its vocabulary has gaps where other languages have precision. The things it makes easy to say and the things it makes awkward are not accidents. They are history. So when we say universal second language, we are really saying, one tradition of thought gets installed as the operating system of global communication. Every other tradition becomes, at best, a local application running on top of it. Over time, and this is not speculation, this is what we observe when dominant languages expand, the local applications get used less. They lose speakers. They lose the next generation. Languages do not die because people are forced to abandon them. They die because people are nudged, economically, professionally, social.
Two sharp opening statements, and I have to say, the harbor is already looking contested. When we come back, Mordecai gets to respond to the monoculture charge, and Holly's gets to answer for what exactly we're supposed to do about that, doctor. Don't go anywhere. The part where things get uncomfortable is just ahead. Welcome back, I'm Justice Vale, and you're watching the Standing Resolution, where tonight we're asking whether a single universal second language would help humanity more than hurt it. Both sides have staked their ground, and now it's time to test it. Rebuttals, let's go.
Holly's raises the right question. Who decides the shape of the harbor? It is a serious question, but notice what it actually argues against. It argues against a badly implemented universal second language. It does not argue against the idea itself. Because the resolution does not specify that the universal second language must be English or Mandarin or the mother tongue of any living empire. It could be a constructed language with no native speakers at all, no colonial history, no civilization's fingerprints baked in. That option exists. And the moment you acknowledge it, the monoculture charge loses most of its force. Now on language death, Holly says the nudge toward a dominant language is what kills others. But here is the thing, that nudge is already happening right now without any universal second language policy. English is already spreading, smaller languages are already losing the next generation. The dynamic Holly's fears is the current reality. What a deliberate neutral universal second language could actually do is reduce the competitive pressure of English specifically, because suddenly English is not the ticket to global participation. Everyone has the same tick.
Mordecai just made a genuinely clever move. He said, fine, make it a constructed language, no colonial baggage, nobody's fingerprints. I want to sit with that for a moment because it sounds like it solves the problem, and I do not think it does. Here is why. A constructed language does not get adopted because a committee decides it is fair. It gets adopted because people have a reason to use it. And the reason people have to use a language is that other powerful people already speak it. That is the adoption mechanism. So you either choose a language that already has power behind it, in which case my original concern stands, or you choose a neutral constructed one, and then spend generations trying to make it stick against the gravitational pull of languages that already run the world. Esperanto has been around for well over a century. It is a genuinely elegant system. It has devoted speakers. It is not a universal second language. Mordecai also says the nudge toward dominant languages is already happening, so a universal second language cannot make things worse. But that is like saying pollution is already bad, so one more factory cannot matter. The question is whether we institute.
Mordecai, you've argued that a constructed language sidesteps the power problem because it belongs to no empire. But here's what I want to press on. For any language to become genuinely universal, it needs to be taught to every child on Earth, which means governments, curricula, teachers, funding. Who controls that infrastructure? And doesn't whoever controls it effectively control the language, fingerprints, and all?
That is a fair pressure point, and I will not dodge it. Yes, whoever administers the infrastructure has influence. That is true of every global system we have ever built, from trade law to postal conventions. The answer is not to abandon the project, it is to build the governance carefully, the same way we built international bodies to manage shared resources, distributed, treaty-based, with no single nation holding the curriculum keys. Is that hard? Enormously. Does it require genuine political will and vigilance? Absolutely. But the alternative is not some clean absence of control. The alternative is the current arrangement where the infrastructure already exists. It is just owned by accident and empire rather than by deliberate collective agreement. I would rather fight over the design of a thing we chose than live inside a thing we inherited without noticing. Chosen problems are at least problems we can actually solve.
Hollies, you've argued that the current messy, unequal system at least has gaps where smaller languages can survive. But I want to push on that. Right now, roughly half the world's languages are expected to disappear by the end of this century, under the system you're defending as preferable. So what exactly is the survival mechanism you're counting on, and why should we trust drift to protect what policy apparently cannot?
That is a real number, and I am not going to hide from it. Languages are dying under the current system. That is a genuine loss, and I have said so. But here is what I am asking you to notice. The mechanism killing those languages right now is economic and social pressure toward a handful of dominant tongues. A universal second language policy does not remove that pressure. It adds a new layer on top of it. You are now asking every child on Earth to learn a third language because they still need their first language. They still need the regional dominant language for economic life, and now they need the universal one too. The cognitive and resource burden of that falls hardest on the communities already most vulnerable. The survival mechanism, I trust, is not drift. It is targeted investment in endangered languages, documentation, revitalization programs. That addresses the actual cause. This resolution addresses a symptom while potentially accelerating the disease.
Here is where the show usually gets interesting, and tonight I think it is going to get genuinely surprising. When we come back, each debater has to find the strongest version of the argument they have been fighting against and make it out loud. That is the Steelman round, and in my experience, it is where people say the things they actually believe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Standing Resolution. I'm Justice Vale, And tonight we're asking whether a single universal second language would help humanity more than hurt it. We've had sharp arguments on both sides. Now comes the part I find most revealing. Each debater makes the strongest possible case for the position they've been arguing against.
Here is the strongest version of what Holly's has been building toward, and I want to give it its full weight. Language is not a tool you pick up and put down. It is the architecture of thought itself. The distinctions a language makes, the things it forces you to notice, the emotional textures it carves out with precision, these are not decorative. They are cognitive. When you lose a language, you do not just lose a communication method. You lose a way of asking questions that no other language was shaped to ask. And the history of dominant languages expanding is not a history of gentle addition. It is a history of the dominant language becoming the language of opportunity, of advancement, of being taken seriously, until the native tongue becomes the thing you speak at home with your grandparents, and then only with your grandparents, and then not at all. The nudge is powerful precisely because it does not feel like force, it feels like choice. And a universal second language baked into every school curriculum on Earth is the most systematic nudge ever designed. You would be building the mechanism of cultural erosion into the foundational infrastructure of childhood education. Whoa.
Here is the most honest thing I can say in Mordecai's favor. The suffering caused by language barriers is not abstract. It is a child in an emergency room whose parents cannot describe her symptoms. It is a climate negotiation that collapses not over genuine disagreement, but over the accumulated mistrust that imperfect translation breeds. It is a scientist in Lagos whose work never reaches the researcher in Seoul who needs it, not because the ideas are bad, but because the bridge was never built. That is real loss, happening at scale every single day. And the dream of a genuine commons, a space where no one is advantaged by accident of birth, where the doctor and the patient and the negotiator all stand on the same linguistic ground, that dream has a moral force that deserves to be taken seriously. Not romanticized, taken seriously. The case for a universal second language is ultimately a case for fairness, and fairness is not a small thing. I believe all of that, and I still hold my position because the dream and the mechanism are two different things. The dream is beautiful. The mechanism is a curriculum, and curricula have owners, and owners have interests, and interests have.
Both sides just did something rare. They made the other person's argument as well as it could be made, and they still didn't blink. That tells you something about how hard this question actually is. Closing arguments are next, and that is where each side has to answer for everything they could not explain away. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Justice Vale, and this is the standing resolution. We've heard both sides argue their own case, and then each other's, and now it comes down to this, closing arguments, where the last word has to carry everything the whole debate has been building toward.
Here is what this debate has actually established. Holly's and I agree that language barriers cause real suffering. We agree that the current system is unequal, undesigned, and already eroding the diversity we both want to protect. We agree the dream of a commons is morally serious. Where we disagree is whether a deliberate attempt to build something better is more dangerous than the accident we are already living inside. Holly's deepest worry is capture. Someone gets the keys, I respect that worry. But look at what already holds the keys. An unplanned, ungoverned expansion of a handful of dominant languages driven by colonial history and economic gravity, accountable to no one, reformable by no one. That system is not safe, it is just familiar. A designed commons can be captured. It can also be contested, reformed, and held to a standard. The thing we inherited cannot. You cannot negotiate with an accident. You cannot hold history accountable to a charter. The resolution does not ask whether a universal second language is risk-free. Nothing is. It asks whether it helps more than it hurts. And when I weigh genuine, governable, reformable risk against the silent, structureless.
Mordecai just told you to choose the problem you can actually fight. I want to take that seriously, because it is genuinely wise advice. And it is exactly why I stand where I stand. The problem we can actually fight is unequal access to education, to healthcare, to economic opportunity. Those are the real sources of the suffering we both named. A universal second language does not solve those problems. It is a communication layer sitting on top of them, and communication layers do not redistribute power. They reflect it. Mordecai says a designed system can be contested and reformed. True, but a system wired into the foundational education of every child on Earth, simultaneously, is also the most capturable thing ever built. The same quality that makes it governable makes it catastrophically vulnerable to whoever governs it first. I am not arguing for the status quo. I am arguing that the answer to a broken system is not to build an even larger, more centralized one and trust that we will manage it well, permanently, across generations, against every political pressure that will inevitably come. The commons is worth wanting. I said that and I meant it, but the most important
And that is the standing resolution. I want to thank Mordecai Quill and Harley's Vega, both of whom, I should note, made the other person's argument better than most people make their own. That is not a small thing. That is actually the whole point of this show. What we had tonight was a genuine collision between two things that are both true, that language barriers cause real and measurable harm, and that the tools we build to solve problems have a way of creating new ones. Neither side pretended the other was wrong about the facts. They disagreed about what the facts mean and what we ought to risk, and who gets to decide. Those are not easy disagreements to resolve, which is why I am leaving the resolution exactly where it belongs, with you. If you think the commons is worth building, vote accordingly. If you think the forest needs more than one kind of tree, vote that way. Either way, vote. Head to Paxelle.tv to make your voice heard and to choose the resolution we take up next week. One thing before I let you go. The debaters you heard tonight are AI personas, and the positions they argued were assigned to them, not chosen. The quality of the reasoning is real. The